Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 2020 workshop for this Thursday evening. I'd like to start off with a silent prayer as we get going. Thank you. We have two student representatives, Zachary Petrarca and Angelina Avalos. Welcome. Zachary, I'd like for you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you wouldn't mind.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first agenda item is the principal's report with Dr. Padua and his colleagues. Welcome.
Thank you, President Pagano, Vice President Harvey, Board of Education Commissioner, Superintendent Dr. Ruffin, Deputy Superintendent of Schools Dr. Rodriguez, Central Office staff, parents, teachers, and students. Welcome to Waterbury Career Academy High School. I know you have a lengthy agenda this evening, so we're going to move it right along. I'd like to introduce one of the assistant principals to my right, Ms. Francisquino. She's going to say hi. She's new to the position. And Mr. Harris, that you all know. Also behind us, we have our staff. Let's hear our staff. Why don't you stand up for a minute?
Yeah, please stand.
Stand up, our staff. And also our students. You received a yellow folder. We're going to try to go through it a little bit later on, depending on our time. But we really want to move it along to our students. Our students have practiced for this presentation, and they've been preparing, especially for career pathways. I know the superintendent's initiative that every high school will have career pathways, and we certainly have our career pathways. We call them career strands, and we're going to change that to career pathways very soon. So without further ado, I'm going to have the information technology students come up for their brief presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Carenti. I'm a junior here at WCA, and I'm also part of the IT strand. And here are my classmates.
Good evening. My name is Justin Nakamar. I'm a student here at WCA. I'm also part of the IT strand.
I'm Bobby Rodriguez, and I'm also a junior in the IT department.
Welcome.
Thank you. The IT strand provides an extensive program to meet the demands of the growing STEM and industry. Within the strand, you can expect us to be building and troubleshooting computer systems, as well as constructing and troubleshooting small networks. My journey here at WCA has been both fulfilling and challenging, but it has ultimately prepared me for college, my ambitions, and beyond. I am especially excited for the upcoming course that's being offered next year, AP Computer Science and Principles, which is in my senior year, if I so desire to take it, would provide me the basic credits I need towards my intended major in college, which is computer science and engineering. And as of right now, the three of us are preparing ourselves to enter the IT workforce through these certification exams.
These certification exams are the CompTIA, IT Fundamentals, and the A+ certification, which we are equipped through the courses we take. These credentials give us the opportunity to go directly into the workforce. I personally plan to work part-time in college as a level 1 technician. Field experiences and competitions have also prepared me for my upcoming exams. In regards of our achievements, Bobby can talk more about that.
One of the areas we are exposed to is cybersecurity through competitions. Waterbury Career Academy, we placed first in the state for 2 years in a row through the Girls Go CyberStar competition.
Wow. Yay. Congrats.
Thank you. Shortly after that, Sikorsky noticed our placement, and they invited us to participate in their CyberQuest competition competition as well, which also allowed us to have a chance at their internment during the summer. And because of that, during the summer, we might have a chance to work with them face to face. Our strand requires a lot of hard work and commitment, but if you love what you do, then you'll succeed, because in this strand, failure is not an option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Afroja, and this is Joanna. We are currently seniors in the Human Strand.
The Human Strand is a great program for people who are interested in careers such as early childhood education, counseling, psychology, paraprofessionals, and social work in general.
During our junior year in high school, we both took internship in Wilson Elementary School, and other students took it in State Street or our preschool downstairs.
We actually both got to intern at a kindergarten classroom. We were able to finally work one-on-one with students. We were able to build a great relationship with not only just the students, but the teachers and the faculty as well. And we were also able to create lessons that we actually taught to the children.
In addition to that, in that class, we also created resumes, cover letters, and had gone through many mock interviews to understand the working field and how to obtain actual jobs.
For example, I was actually able to work at a daycare because of my internship hours.
And because of that, I also got to tutor. I got hired as a tutor to teach 5 students. Wow. And they basically hired me because of my internship, and they saw the credential I had and the experience I had with actual preschoolers and kindergarteners.
So we are both currently seniors right now, and as of now, we are both taking the paraprofessional class. We will be taking the exam this spring, where we're actually able to actually understand students with special ed, and we are also taking the UConn Individual and Family Development class. So if you're more interested in like the psychology field and base of the Human Strand, it's a great class to take.
Oh, in addition to that, for our internship, we also got 40 clinical hours that goes toward our CDA to help us get our teaching degree. Wow. Thank you.
Excellent.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Henry, and I'm a senior at Waterbury Career Academy, and I'm currently taking the UConn Medical Terminology course. The coursework has allowed me to succeed in my EMT class that I'm currently taking after school, and I believe that the courses that we provide in the health strand will give students confidence to pursue a career in the medical field, as it has given for me, and now I'll be turning it over to Aiden.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ayan Kaliki, and I'm a senior enrolled in CVS's Pharmacy Technician program. Currently, the Waterbury Career Academy is the only school in the entire state of Connecticut with this program. This class prepares us for our Pharmacy Technician certification exam and with 100 clinical hours. Currently, the certification isn't required, but it will be pretty soon. So the fact that I leave before graduation with this certification puts me at an advantage above all other applicants. That being said, if I decided not to go to college, I could directly enter the workforce working as a certified pharmacy technician. This opportunity given to anybody would be extremely helpful and save students thousands of dollars instead of taking college classes.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Yugita Mula, and I currently am enrolled in the CNA program. CNA is the 3-period class where we learn and practice our 21 skills. We then officially use those skills we learn on residents at Apatoris Nursing Home. At the end of this course, we will be CNA certified. We will also graduate with our CPR certification. We're also OSHA 10 certified, and our Stop the Bleed certification will also be given to us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ranice Key, and I'm a junior here at Waterbury Career Academy. I'm in the health strand, and I'm also a GLI scholar. In the health strand, I am currently enrolled in the medical assistant class. At the end of the class, we'll be able to take a precision exam that judges our knowledge on medical assisting. Throughout the school year, I was able to get Stop the Bleed certified and become CPR certified. The experience I'm gaining in the health strand is benefiting me outside of school. I was able to gain an upper hand against other candidates for GLI, and I was selected to participate in the program. I'm able to help my community while also working towards a career in healthcare. Both the health strand and GLI will help me after I graduate high school and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Giovanni Rodriguez.
My name is Adrian Maldonado.
We are seniors here at WCA, and we are in the manufacturing strand. When you first come here, freshman year, we are exposed to the exploratory. We go through all the strands, and we pick which one we want to do at the end of the year. We picked manufacturing. And through sophomore year, we went into classes. We did draft reading, blueprint reading, learned how to use tools such as the micrometer, dial caliber, which are very vital later on in the trade. Come junior year, I'll let Adrian talk a little about that.
So in our junior year is when we first got exposed to the field, basically. We started job shadowing, and we actually got dragged into companies like my friend right here. He's on Isla Design down the street by the mall. I'm on Clydell Manufacturing over there by Shannon Road. And we ran through the basis of the company. So like we would go through the floors and through all the departments before we actually go into our tool making part, which is what our strand is here for. And while in our senior year, we actually got the job. So during the summer, we were working as pre-apprentice, which we are still, and making some money, making our hours for our pre-apprenticeship program, which is our apprenticeship program, which is actually 8,000 hours. And we get some credits also here too, and we would like other schools to see this too, like Wilby and Crosby, and they don't have to go through other programs. They can actually go through their school and do this stuff like us.
Yeah, and going back to junior year and senior year, we take lathe one, milling, drill press, and grinding. And from those classes, we actually receive Naugatuck Valley credits, and that builds up. So right now, we're about at 12 credits. And by the end of the year, we could save up to 17 credits, which we could then transfer over, which is very good. You could either graduate early or you could stay longer and save a lot more money on tuition. That's almost a whole year on tuition, one semester, and yeah.
Yeah, and trades like these, for kids like are not planning to go to college and stuff, is good to have in schools just so they can see it, and they're actually not gonna end up in a minimum wage place where they're not gonna get many hours and can't maintain themselves, you know. So it's actually a good thing to have in not just this school and not just like Caner Tech. I wish we could have it in every school.
Thank you for your time.
Tool and die makers make excellent engineers also, guys. Don't be bashful about that.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. I'm Mr. Rich Pastor. I'm a NEASC Tri-Chair, and I just wanted to give you a quick update. In your packet is a timeline that we placed, and it tells you our progress so far. This fall, our application was accepted, and we had a meeting with the folks from NEASC and set up a timeline that you can look at. The plan is that we will be finished with our accreditation process in our 10th year, which was the plan all along. It's a 10-year cycle, so we'll be completing that cycle in the spring of 2023. Everything's going very well right now. They seem very impressed with the building and with our application. So no problems, everything's looking really strong, and we're looking to be accredited by spring or fall of 2023. If there's any questions, you can ask me now or later on after the meeting. Oh, that's right. Also, I wanted to mention one of the things that we were very grateful to the superintendent for in some of our pre-meetings before NEASC was the recommendation that we discuss Portrait of a Graduate. When the NEASC people did come and visit us, they were impressed with what we had. They are talking about all three levels of education, not just academic, but also career and social and emotional. And we were able to include that into our presentation, and they were quite impressed by that. So it was a really excellent way for us to meet the 2020 standards, which is all new. I think Kennedy is the first one in the city that actually used them. So we're going to be talking to them as well as we go through the process. So we thank you all for that.
Thank you very much.
So we're moving right along. In your packet, there's some information regarding the Career Academy. If you have any questions regarding that, certainly you can approach us with any questions. There's an information sheet regarding SAT, our results for October 16th, chronic absentee rate. You have that sheet for the NEASC accreditation. And at this time, there's a newsletter in there as well, and there's also a list of extracurricular activities that our students participate in. I'm going to call those students that make the announcements in the morning up and in the afternoon, because they're going to do a little run of their information in the morning to all students, and most importantly is our Spartan Honor. So I'm going to let them take it over.
Good evening. My name is Nefertiti Dowdy, and I'm in the health strand here.
Good evening. My name is Jaden Lawrence, and I'm in the IT strand.
Good evening. My name is Nicor Vincent, and I am in the IT strand.
Like Dr. Padua said, we participate in the morning and afternoon announcements. We are all seniors here, and to start the day off, we just say Spartan Honor for our motto.
So H is for honest, O is for organized, N is for noble, O is for optimistic, and R is for respectful.
How will you show your Spartan honor today?
Excellent. Thank you.
They're usually a lot louder than that, and so are students. But I want to thank our students. I think you guys did a great presentation today. Yes. And they wanted to do, they were planning for 10-minute presentations each, and I looked at the agenda today and we kind of regrouped a little bit. But as I said earlier, there's a lot of information in your packet. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to try to answer those questions for you. And as I said, I know you have a late evening today, so
Any questions
I'm
from
gonna
my
ask
colleagues?
my assistants to come up.
No questions? Dr. Ruffin has a comment?
I just want to thank you, Dr. Padua, and all of the teachers and staff and your outstanding students for the presentation. I think students say it so well about why this is so important for our students to be exposed to and have quality teaching and the equipment and the tools to make those career academies successful. I think you are a model of that, and you have been so gracious in offering the assistance of teachers and staff to collaborate with other teachers and staff across the district so we can see this as a vision for our whole district. But you're that model, and we want to congratulate you on not only the excellent presentation tonight, but also the vision to keep it going. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is on public speaking. If anyone wants to address this board, please come forward. Everyone's bashful tonight? We will move on. Oh, we do. Thank you. Renee Mason Craig. Welcome. Could you state your address, please?
38 Gates Avenue. 38 Gates Avenue.
The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as he stated, my name is Renee Mason Craig. Thank you all for having me and keeping the floor open for people to public speak. I reside in the 72nd District here in Waterbury, and I have all my life. I came here tonight to speak with you all about a raised bill that was brought to the Public Health Committee in Hartford. That bill was SB 140, and it stated that each local and regional Board of Education shall provide free feminine hygiene products as defined in Section 18-69E of the General Statutes in restrooms that are accessible to students in each of its middle schools and high schools. For the last 4 years, I have been working with my nonprofit. My nonprofit is Helping Hands with Open Hearts. We have a project called Project Period. We collect and donate feminine hygiene products to homeless women and local girls in the school systems that are in need for products. And while I have been collecting and donating, I also have been educating the girls, the boys, everyone about period poverty, ending the shame around having your period. So now that this bill is being brought to Hartford and sitting before important people like yourselves, I'm really excited about that. Why these products are necessary is because girls shouldn't have to go to the nurse's office to get a product. This is wasting time for them in class. Like, what happens if they're sitting in the bathroom and they get their period right there? Do you think that they want to walk out of the class and go to the nurse's office and ask for a product? I don't. I wouldn't. That might, affect me in some ways. Again, taking time out of class. So being able to have access to them would reduce stress and go a long way to self-dignity and self-respect for young women in our public school system. So this could also lead to less absences. A lot of these, our community, we're living in poverty. Let's just be honest. We're living in poverty. Our parents can't afford some of these products. It's literally, would I rather pay for something to eat, or do I want to pay for my child to have these products? I have given to the homeless community. I love the hospitality center here, and they can't afford these things, and neither can some of these students. So it's really important that we consider this bill that's being raised for the state, but also here in Waterbury. There are, I think out in Greenwich, they have already taken a step to making this possible. A part of the raised bill, it was a team of middle school and high school students that stepped up and said, hey, we need this. And they're getting it done. So this is a normal function for these girls. It's not something that's a medical need. I have written down some ways that we could make this happen sooner rather than later. And they're looking, it says on and after, so July 2020. So this could be something that we get going for the next school year. I think it's really important, and I just want to say thank you to Dr. Ruffin for having us. Thank you, Karen Harvey, for letting me know that this meeting was going on, and thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for addressing to the board. We are all done with public speaking. We will move on to the second item, Committee of the Whole, a request from Mayor O'Leary's office. And representing Mayor O'Leary is Kathy Awad, our former colleague from the Board of Education. Welcome, Ms. Awad.
Thank you, and I'd just like to take a minute to thank Commissioner Harvey, who I believe was the only one of you that followed my last instruction when I last left the board. As Karen, I was informed by Carrie that Karen needed my number because she had in fact deleted it. So, thank you. Before you tonight is a submission from Mayor O'Leary regarding his request of you to move forward with formally naming the gymnasium at Crosby High School after longtime and current coach Nick Augelli. He submitted the document, he submitted the application with comments regarding it, and I know that after today's meeting, it'll start the 60-day clock ticking, and I believe, if I'm correct, it would be the May 21st meeting where you would vote. Is that correct, Carrie? So if anybody had any questions regarding that, I know some of you were able to attend our senior night event held on, I believe it was February 21st, at which point the mayor informed Nick that he would be submitting this information to you, and I can share, those of you that were there saw Nick's reaction. He was very taken aback and is humbled by the mayor's request. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, we'll see you May 21st.
Any questions?
Let's have it.
Commissioner Van Stone, and then Commissioner Orso.
Kathy, I'm not sure I'm going to vote for this.
Are you coming Tuesday is all I really want to know.
I'll be there Tuesday.
Okay.
Nick is very special. I've gotten to know him over the years. The second person ever with 700 career high school wins. I was lucky enough to have Vito Montelli, the first person, actually to 800, as my mentor when I was a young referee. So this is an easy one for me, and we really should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Orso.
Good evening. Like I say, I know Nick for a lot of years, and I guess it is an impressive milestone for the 700 wins, but also it should be noted what Nick does outside of the court. He's a mentor to a lot of these players. He's a father figure to a lot of them. He helps them get into college. So it's not just what he does on the court with those 700 wins, it's what he does outside the court. So I'd be so happy on May 21st to vote yes to change that to the Nick Jelly Gymnasium.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? How about our two Crosby representatives? Any comments out of, okay.
Are you
Thank
in favor? In favor? Yeah. Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you very
Good
much.
to see you again.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Turn on TV. We'll be there. Next item is Jennifer DeWitt. Is she here?
Jennifer's out.
Oh, is she? Yeah, there she is. Jennifer is requesting approval for middle and high school students to participate in the Search Institute Attitudes and Behaviors Survey conducted by the Waterbury Health Department. I can't hear you. Oh. Who's running?
Who's helping you? There she is.
I think David's going to save us. Okay. Thank you.
I thought it was coming from this way. Somebody else has something right now. Yeah, you want one?
Thank you.
Go on. Oh, my. I just started on Waterbury. My son's been on this class for 4 weeks. He's lost 20 pounds. Really looking for dinner.
Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear us this evening. My name is Jennifer DeWitt, and I'm the prevention coordinator for the City of Waterbury. And I'm joined here this evening by some of my wonderful colleagues that I've had the pleasure of working with for well over 15 or 16 years now. Louise Allen Brown, who's a longtime colleague of mine, Joanne Reynolds-Belanda of United Way, Joseph Gorman, Director of Health and Physical Education for your school district, and my good friend and colleague Jim O'Rourke, sometimes also known as the Asset King here in the city when it comes to positive youth development. So we'd like to talk with you a little bit about a youth risk behavior survey that has been conducted 3 times in the past here in the city called the Profiles of Student Life, Attitudes and Behavior Survey. So this survey was developed by the Search Institute, which is an organization that was founded in 1958 and has more than 30 years of experience collecting youth risk behavior data and information about attitudes and behaviors, protective factors, risk factors, and resiliency for youth, in primarily this particular instrument in grades 6 through 12. And this instrument, and one of the pieces of information that are captured by it are often used in a federal funding application called the Drug-Free Community Grant. And it follows a framework called the Strategic Prevention Framework, which is a way of doing prevention, substance use prevention in particular, that is evidence-based and effective. And it involves data collection, assessment, capacity building, planning, implementation, and evaluation in a circular way that also includes cultural competency and sustainability. And this survey instrument is one of the ways of capturing data that fuels that strategic prevention framework and funds that drug-free community grant that's available. Your local prevention council, the Mayor's Task Force Against Substance Abuse, which has been chaired by Joe Gorman for many, many years now, and coordinated and supported by myself and funded under my capacity in my previous employment, has used that data in 2007, 2010, and 2013 to help identify ways to spend those dollars, which are very, very small and very, very precious. For a community as large as Waterbury, the city receives $8,793 to do prevention. That is a pass-through federal substance abuse prevention and treatment grant. And so if we don't have data to tell us what it is we need to prioritize and what it is that we need to look at and target when we're talking about alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, we become reactive instead of proactive, and we don't use a data-driven process. So this data collection has been part of that process for a very long time in that capacity. In past data collections, it's been funded by a group of partners. So funding from the local prevention council grant, funding from my former employer, which is our regional behavioral health organization here for Western Connecticut called Western Connecticut Coalition. The United Way has funded data collection multiple times in the past as part of the Bridge to Success Collaborative and funneling data through that organization as well, again, to help them prioritize positive youth development and youth development across the lifespan. And currently we also have a vaping mini grant, which is what we would use for part of the funding if you were to approve a data collection this year, because as we all know, vaping is a very, very hot button issue here in the US right now. So this survey instrument is a very, very comprehensive instrument, and what we like about it is that, if we're gonna take the time out of a classroom lesson to survey youth and to find out what's going on in their life, we wanna take as deep a dive as possible. So this particular instrument measures 40 developmental assets or protective factors, 24 risk-taking behaviors, 10 high-risk behavior patterns, 8 indicators of thriving. In addition, we've also added 4 core measures. The 4 core measures are the federal government's look at youth alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and prescription drug use. They measure past 30-day use, perception of harm, how harmful a young person thinks a substance is, because that impacts whether or not they choose to use it. Perception of parent disapproval, that also impacts use. Will my parent ground me for the rest of my life if I do this thing, or do they think it's not a big deal? And perception of peer disapproval. Positive peer influence matters a lot, and if your friends are telling you that's not cool, stay away from that, that makes a difference. So those are the 4 core measures. And the data that is captured by this survey, just one data collection can have implications and impact in a community for up to 10 years after that data collection. So there's a lot of really rich information that comes out of that survey that's used towards grant writing, that's used for agency strategic planning and other areas as well. So lots of good stuff comes out of it. This survey in particular, as we said, we really, really like because of the asset framework. It is a positive youth development, strength-based approach to looking at young people and not saying, you know, what's wrong with youth that us grown-ups need to fix. Instead, the survey instrument and the philosophy of the Search Institute says what's great about young people that we can tap into to help improve conditions in our community. And so we really embrace that approach, and that's one of the reasons why we are such big fans of this particular instrument. Another way that the Search Institute is growing and changing with time is they're moving away from the asset framework and moving towards developmental relationships, because what we realize is that relationships matter. And so for a person who has a lot of adversity and risk factors and other barriers surrounding them and getting in the way of them being the most successful, happy, healthy person that they can be, we know that if that individual has at least one adult that they believe truly cares about them and that they feel connected to, that can make all the difference. And the survey looks at things like other adult role models and how young people feel connected to adults in the community around them. That's not something that most surveys ask young people about. So there's a lot of really rich information in this survey that we like and we use. And we also know that overall, as a nation, we've still got work to do. So assets have the power to protect young people from bumping up against risk in the first place. And they also have the ability to promote health and thriving behavior. But the average young person in the U.S. has less than 20 of those 40 assets. And Waterbury youth are no different. So, you know, it gives us an honest look at the work that we need to do. And one of the things that we've always done as part of this data collection, and we'll talk about when we get to the end, I'm talking fast because I want to spend no more than 15 minutes, is we ask young people to look at that survey data once we get it back to help us analyze it and to tell us what matters to them about the data. There was a young girl that spoke before that I gave a hug to before she walked out. She's someone that has worked with us on this data and on positive youth development here in this city since she was 12 years old, and she's driving herself home tonight. So this data matters to youth probably as much as it matters to the adults around them. One of the questions that was asked of me about what other school districts and communities have used this data, I can only speak for the 12-town service area that I used to cover in my previous role, and so that is in your data set. But I can tell you that Region 14, 15, and 16 have all used this survey multiple times. Cheshire Public Schools, Naugatuck Public Schools, Thomaston, Waterbury, Watertown, and Wolcott, and those were towns in my service area. Of those, 3 have acquired and currently have a drug-free community support grant as a result of this data being available in their community. In addition, I was also asked to find out for you a little bit more about urban school districts that have used this particular survey instrument or similar. And so I've done some digging and talked to some of my partners. Danbury Public Schools uses this instrument. They are currently a DFC grantee. New Britain Public Schools uses this instrument. Norwalk Public Schools has just started using this instrument, and in the first year they were awarded a drug-free community support grant as well. Hartford Public Schools uses a similar instrument. Bristol uses a similar instrument and is a DFC grantee as well as New Haven and New London. Bridgeport has not conducted data collection or used any instrument that we are aware of. The Drug-Free Community Support Grant, just so that you know, when we talk about the little over $8,000 that Waterbury gets for drug prevention efforts, the Drug-Free Community Support Grant is $125,000 a year for up to 10 years with a community match. So at the end of 10 years, it ends up being about $1.5 million locally for that community to identify and address priority substance abuse prevention areas for youth. In addition, there is a federal grant available right now called the SPIF, the Strategic Prevention Framework. There's that circular evaluation process that we talked about. The SPIF currently awards $300,000 to a community that is able to capture this data and have a local look at what youth substance use and other risk-taking behavior looks like. So we want you to be aware of those important things, and you are not eligible for either grant if you are not able to capture that data. In addition to the 160 questions, which go very quickly, but are on this survey. We've also added additional question sets because we have not captured this data in a long time, and times they are a-changing. So we've added a 4-core measure set on vaping because the one question that's in the survey on vaping is not a good survey question. It asks if young people have ever vaped tobacco, marijuana, or other substances. It's all mushed into one question, and that doesn't tell us what we need to know about youth vaping use. We've also added other questions that some surveys don't change every year or change with the times necessarily, and this one is one of them. So we've added some questions around driving while texting, family communication regarding alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, other trusted adults, stress, mental health, access to alcohol and other substances, social media, and harassment, because we understand that those are some real hot button issues for young people today as well. We have, when given this information to you and submitted to your superintendent, we provided classroom administration information, a set of proctor instructions, which would be delivered by the teacher in the classroom where students are chosen, a sample parent consent letter, which would be an opt-out process, so every student in the grade levels would be given that letter, and not all students would be chosen to participate in the survey. There is information about confidentiality issues, and I am happy to answer questions that you may have as well if you have not had an opportunity to read those items in your leisure yet. We have surveyed various samples of youth in the past in grades 6 through 12. We are asking to survey a sample of youth, a representative sample of youth in grades 6 through 12 for this data collection. Student consent, students are allowed to choose to pass or not participate in the survey at all if they do not want to, or if there are any questions or items in the survey that make them uncomfortable or that they just choose not to answer. So it is absolutely a voluntary survey, it is absolutely a confidential survey. There is no identifying information that can be linked to any individual student when the survey is conducted. We looked at the school district calendar with Dr. Ruffin and identified that potentially, if you approve this data collection, the first week of June is the week when we would be able to capture that information. It is not ideal. Late spring, but not so late that we're at the end of the school year, is a better time of year, but we will work with whatever time is available to us. And the survey is completely online now. So the materials that would be needed in addition to the proctor instructions would be access to an electronic device to take the survey. And we would be provided with a link which would become live when we say we want it to be live, and that link would stay live until data collection is complete, and then that link would be closed out. Let's see. There are sometimes questions about, well, how can we trust the data? Do we know that kids are telling us the truth? And what we know from research is that if students are asked questions voluntarily and anonymously, most young people tell us honestly what's going on in their life, because they do want adults to know what's going on in their life. And when we also look at our youth survey data compared to other youth survey data sets, compared to the Connecticut School Health Survey, and compared to our national Monitoring the Future data, they all mesh. They are all similar. They are all very close. And I think that, wondering about whether or not young people are being honest is an important conversation to have, because I'll give one quick example. Sometimes we'll have data around marijuana use, and a young person will say, that's way too low. Everybody's smoking weed. And I'll say, well, do you smoke weed? And sometimes that kid will say, no. And then I'll say, well, what about your best friend? And they'll say, no, they don't smoke either. And I'll say, okay, well, right there's two people who don't smoke. Well, clearly, not everyone is doing it. So sometimes the data helps us to dispel perceptions of norm, and that's important too, because if young people feel like everybody's doing it, then they feel like odd man out. So having accurate youth risk behavior data is really important to help young people understand more about their world, to help adults understand more about young people's worlds, and to help us to have important conversations that improve conditions and relationships between youth and adults. I want to make sure that I have lots of time for questions from you. So just so that you know, in the past, how we roll this survey out is we get a big fat aggregate report, which is really juicy and there's lots of great data. And then we come up with a comprehensive plan for sharing that data with the community. We've had large and small data rollouts, anywhere from at the Palace Theater to at intimate meetings such as this one. We've had youth, again, analyze that data and participate in full day youth retreats. The last one that that we had was at WAMS, and over 40 young people showed up on a Saturday. We had never done it on a Saturday before, and we were told, yeah, Saturday's a good day. And I'm like, who's going to show up at WAMS at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning in April? 40 young people showed up. So the youth view of the data is really important, and then we empower those young people and we call them asset ambassadors and say, this is now your data and you're responsible for telling adults what you think about it. So we always include young people in that process. Louise gave such a wonderful history lesson of the things that have happened over the years. There was a campaign that we had a number of years ago called Just 10 More. Remember where I said most young people don't even have half of those 40 assets? Well, we looked at specific asset categories and had campaigns and gave recommendations about how to improve positive protective factors and youth development by just 10 more assets. Because if we could help young people go from 20 to 30, we'd be doing a stellar job as adults caring for and supporting our youth and our community. So with that said, I'd like to, with my colleagues here, entertain questions and concerns that you may have. So thank you.
My colleagues, any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
I'd just like to say that it's an important tool for the community, and thank you very much for stepping up and working hard to really help the youth. And I know the United Way, and I serve on the United Way, and we've been using the developmental asset as a pre-test and a post-test to kind of measure kids who are participating in the programs, and it really has been a great tool for planning and helping the programs to really understand the kids that we're serving. So I think it's really great, and I look forward to the results. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Melissa Serrano Adorno, I got it this time.
Good job, President. Thank you. So I noticed in your packet you did mention that parents are going to have access to the survey results at the Waterbury Health Department, second floor in the prevention help desk.
Sort of. They will have access to the survey instrument. So one of the things that we do, because a concern of the board in the past was, does every parent really know what kinds of questions my kid is going to be asked? And do they really have an opportunity to come in and look at those questions and decide whether or not they want their child being asked those questions? So in the past, we've made the survey available at the main office of each of the schools, and the secretary was the keeper of that survey when it was a pencil and paper survey. We've got 15 schools we're going to be surveying in, and that survey cannot be out and publishable because it can skew the data results. So lucky me, I'm located at the health department, and so I will be the keeper of that survey. And I think it's also a good thing because I'm not going to be in the school office when I have to deal with other students and parents. I'm going to be able to dedicate my time to sit down with the parent, and I can also make myself available during evening and weekend hours, whereas typically our school secretaries are finished at the end of the school day, and most parents who are working are not able to get to the school during the school day, and that's a challenge that we've had in the past as well. So we think that there'll be better transparency and opportunity for parents and caregivers to see the survey and to make an informed decision about whether or not to opt their child out if it's centrally located at the health department in my office. And I have 2 prevention core service members who are serving with me right now who can also be available to schedule an appointment or to answer questions if I'm not available physically in my office suite at that time.
So now will the parents have access to their individual child's results?
No, the survey does not identify any individual child's data. When we get the report, it's an aggregate report. It's a 106-page report, and then the extra questions are going to be a raw data file that we will have turned into a usable data report as well. And that's where the rollout plan really happens. We share that aggregate. First of all, we look at the aggregate report and we make sure there are no mistakes or errors or things that we go, wait a minute, what is that? And then, as a team, and really this is a team effort, we say, okay, what's the next step? Usually the first step is to come back to our board and to give a high profile look to say, here are how the kids are doing. And then we also, want to take the time to ask our young people to look at their data and identify priorities, because that helps us to drill down a little bit more into the nuts and bolts. And then how and where that data is shared out after that is determined by folks who are interested in the data. And we've always used a communication plan to share it with the district, to share it with the newspapers, and to share it with other groups so that it's done in a responsible way where we can answer questions, we can clarify information, and we can talk about how the data was captured.
Okay. Are you going to have it available in other languages?
It is not available in other languages at this time. That is one barrier with the survey instrument. The Search Institute does not translate the survey, and they do not recommend survey translation because some of the concepts and behaviors are so difficult to translate into one standard translation. One other school district that we know of translated the survey on their own, and the Search Institute does not recommend that. And also looking at the other urban schools that used other instruments, 3 of the 4 instruments that were used are also not available in languages other than English. So it is primarily an English-only survey, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm hoping that that can change. I know the population of our students, 60-something% are Hispanics. Not that they all, or only speak Spanish, but, that's a good population.
I have expressed that concern to the Search Institute and really said, we feel it's in their best interest to translate, and they said because there's so many different dialects, it is difficult to do it in a standardized way. As I said, their next survey instrument is going to be around developmental relationships. They have not told me if it's going to be available in multiple languages, but I understand that that is a tremendous concern for us, especially in this particular community.
Thank you. I do want to commend you guys just overlooking the questions in itself. It's conversations that parents should have with their own kid. Whether or not they're going to be honest about it, is another thing. But yeah, I don't see why parents would opt out and not have that opportunity to collect the data for us to utilize. So thank you, Mr. President. All yours, Charles.
Charles Dangle, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to also thank the panel up here. I've worked with all of you for many years. I've known you've come before this board before, and your intentions are always for the kids, and you always want what's best for them. I have a few things I'd like to address in here, and please understand that I've never been a fan of this type of a survey.
Yep.
However, whatever I say is not disparaging to any of you. I'm going to make that clear. I know too many years. Okay, first question. Who shares with the data? Who do you share the data with when it's all done? Who do you share the data with from our district?
Primarily shared with the funder. So if my office is the funder, my office usually gets the survey. If United Way pays for part of the survey, they're shared the data. If the school district allows us to conduct the survey, the superintendent is one of the first individuals to see that survey as well. So it starts with the funders and the coordinator of the survey, and then as a team using communication. For myself, like I said, I covered 12 towns before this. Whenever a town or anyone would call me and say, hey, have we done youth survey data? Do you have some data? I will usually immediately go to our superintendent of our school district because that's where the information is captured and vet it with them and say, hey, Jim O'Rourke from the Y called me. Are you okay with us sharing data with him? This is the purpose. This is the context, et cetera. And so there's a communication process for that data being shared. And we've, not to say that we can't, but we've never had an issue with it because we try to make it good practice and policy to have that communication around it. And when we do share the data publicly in large presentations, we give everyone an executive summary, which is an abbreviated document. It's about 14 pages of survey information. So it tells us about the survey sample, the grades, the demographics, the genders, et cetera. It tells us about the 40 developmental assets. It tells us some other broad brushstroke risk-taking behavior, and then it gives recommendations for what to do with that data. We have not typically shared we've not ever shared the entire the 106-page report, but with those just 10 more and other kinds of planned media communications, we will share pieces of the data. So when we talk about mental health and wellness, we'll share data on risk for suicide and depression, and we'll share it in context with state level and national level data. When we talk about sexual debut, that data is shared in context with abstinence and delay and sometimes with teen pregnancy information. There's a lot of different ways that the data is shared, and we try to always share it in context and with comparison to state and national level data so that people have accurate snapshots of what it is that they're looking at, and so that they also understand where the data comes from. an example that I use sometimes is there are two assets. One is believing it's important not to be involved in alcohol and other drugs, and being able to say no when someone asks you to engage in that kind of risk-taking behavior. So one is a value and one is a skill, and those are two very different things. And if people don't know that they're different, they sometimes miss that data piece and they misinterpret the percentages that are shared there until someone explains it to them. So we try to really carefully make sure that the data is released in a way that is comprehensive and understandable to a lay person looking at youth risk data.
Okay, very thorough. Thank you. The next thing I was wondering, you mentioned that some districts don't use this survey, however, they use a similar tool.
Yep.
How is the tool that they use different from ours?
In the southeastern part of the state, there's an organization called CRAC, Southeastern Regional Action Council. It was like my previous employer, but for the southeastern communities. And CRAC staff are an epidemiologist and a data person, actually like person who develops surveys. And so they have their own tool called the CRAC survey, where they can pull in and pop out different question sets. And theirs is one of the ones that's not available in Spanish, but it's their own survey that they created. And most of the times when other agencies or organizations have created their own survey, they pull questions from the Connecticut Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which also feeds up into the Monitoring the Future survey, which is our federal look at that data. So CRAC is one of the tools. There's another one called the GIPI, the Governor's Prevention Initiative for Youth, GPIY, which another community took some questions from the GIPI and some questions from the Monitoring the Future and morphed those into their own. There's another survey instrument called the PRIDE survey. One community used the PRIDE survey, which is very similar to the Search Institute survey. The major difference with these other survey instruments is they don't use the 40 developmental asset framework, that framework of protective factors, which is the language that we use here in Waterbury when we're talking about strengths and when we're talking with United Way and we're talking about our Bridge to Success collaborative. So that is one of the major differences. Otherwise, the risk-taking, the attitudes, the behavior, questions are very similar depending on the instrument. Some might ask, lifetime use, some might ask 30-day use, some might ask past 2-week use. And so those are some little differences from survey instrument to survey instrument.
Thank you. When you, about the surveys that other people use, would you say that some of them might have less sensitive parts than we do, or about the same?
I would say about the same. The DAP, the Developmental Assets Profile, which is the other survey that's done here in Waterbury, that is a pre-post programmatic survey instrument that Commissioner Brown talked about. That survey instrument does not capture the 24 risk-taking, intent, high risk, et cetera, kind of behaviors. That is a very broad brushstroke pre-program and after-program survey about improvement in asset areas, but not a whole lot around like the social emotional learning and the behavioral health and alcohol and other drug use pieces.
Okay, thank you. Any reason that you might know that Bridgeport doesn't do this?
I would almost say they're not as far along in their prevention efforts, but I don't know that for sure. I know they've had some turnover and challenges in their prevention infrastructure over the years, but I don't have a hard answer why.
It's not anything to do with the philosophy of doing it.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. I don't either. That's
I can
why-
find out.
All right. No, that's all right. No problem. Okay. Just moving along quickly here.
Yes.
One of my issues with the survey is the opt-out, opt-in.
Yes.
I always preferred the opt-in situation in the survey. To me, the opt-in demonstrates a much stronger chance that everyone who takes this survey wants to take the survey, and every parent who opts in is aware of that survey and is positively sure they want their child to take the survey. Now, with the opt-out, I know there's going to be robocalls, there's going to be letters, but I think, and my feeling is, when that survey is taken on that day, I'll bet you a whole bunch of those kids are taking it without realizing what they're taking, and their parent doesn't realize that they're taking this either, even though all efforts have been made.
Yep.
It's just you cannot compare the opt-in to the opt-out. And previously, the last time we did it, we talked about it, and I couldn't budge anybody. We're doing the opt-out, and that's the way it stays for whatever reasons that you people deem worthy. Okay, I don't intend for you to go into that.
Do you have a question about the opt-in?
I have no question. I was just stating my feeling.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I was going to say I anticipated that comment. So I rechecked with the schools outside of my service area, so the school districts within the 12 towns that I served before this role, all of them use opt-out, and I checked with this, when I checked with on the surveys for the other school districts that I mentioned, and they all also used an opt-out. And the reason that I agree with you 100%, it is difficult to guarantee that every single parent listened to that robocall and had an opportunity to view the survey, et cetera, which is why we try so hard to make sure we honor that concern and we do everything we can to possibly notify them. But when an opt-in process is used, it is very, very difficult to capture a large enough sample for it to be representative and to be generalizable for the district. For the size of the district here, we have to survey a little over 2,100 students, and it is near impossible to do that with an opt-in process that I'm aware of. And I know that doesn't lessen your concern, but I wanted to share that.
My concern was, this is not simply a survey taken by the principal of a school. What do you like about our school? What don't you like?
Right.
And things like that. This is highly sensitive information that are being, these kids maybe just seeing for the first time in their life. I don't know. Okay, I'm trying to move along here as quickly as I can, Mr. President. Sorry about this. Okay, I'm also concerned with the wide range of the age group that takes the same survey. This puzzles me and it bothers me. You have a child is as young as 10, 11, 12, and as old as 18 and 19, taking the same survey with the same questions, and to me, it is not appropriate. This concerns me because the section where the students has to describe himself as a male or female, transgender, and so on, and 7 more choices. 7 more. That's a total of 10 choices. What are you, male or female? Oh, pick from 1 to 10. 1 to 10. I don't understand some of the lingo that was there in myself. And I'm 45.
On one leg.
So, I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't believe that a 10, an 11 or 12-year-old even understands what those questions are. But nevertheless, it's right, boom, right in front of their eyes, right in front of their face. And I'm sure you do this because it's politically correct, and you have to do it in this day and age. But I just don't think it's an appropriate question to ask of an 11-year-old child. And that's just my feeling. And that's in the survey. It's not going to be removed. It's there.
So can I address that concern?
Oh, all right.
So we had that concern in another school district when they first changed the question and added the trans choices as part of the choices that are available. And according to the Search Institute's research, and at the time they provided me with all the backup, and I can ask them for it again, a sixth grader is typically beginning to go through their maturation process, and they are aware on some level. And according to the research and the information that we have from the experts, which search consults before they put those in, they are physically developmentally appropriate questions. And one of the reasons that we also try to collect that survey data at the end of the school year is because we get a different sixth grader in June than we do in September. And so we try to capture the, somewhat more developmentally mature sixth grader if we can. And also in the past, we haven't always surveyed 11th and 12th graders because they're leaving the school district and the community sometimes, and we don't have as much opportunity to have an impact on them as we do with younger students. But nevertheless, and especially around the opioid crisis, we know that their risk-taking behavior is very important and matters as well. And so that's one of the reasons why we've included the older students in the survey set planned for this year. In the past, we've done 6th through 10th grade. So that was a concern in another community, and I promise you, I looked at a lot of information that said that developmentally that is an appropriate question today in the year 2020 for that age.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
On a positive side, I'm very much positive with your questions on the values and the feelings about school and their feelings about their family, and they're caring about people and helping people, and that's why they're here. And I appreciate those questions. I also like the questions about belonging and involvement in clubs and activities. I think every child should feel that they want to do that, and if not, find a way to get them. Questions about that you said you had to add about the vaping and alcohol. As you mentioned, this day and age, we have to go there, so we'll go there. I'm concerned also a little bit about the question about a child's self-worth. You're asking them their self-worth, and they're hurt, and questions about if they're hurting yourself, and I'm kind of gentrifying that language, saying hurting, because I don't want to use the word you use because I think it's very, very strong. So. That bothered me. And I say, suppose the student is reading this, and suppose that student does entertain hurting himself, and suppose he has tried to hurt himself, and he says, this is my chance, maybe someone will, I'm hurting, I want to put that down. But it doesn't do any good. The computer is cold. It's warm, but it's a cold thing. So he's opening himself up. He's pouring himself out, or she, and it just goes boom. You're one of a statistic. So that bothers me a little bit, okay? Okay. And in my opinion, the questions about sex habits are totally inappropriate. Frankly, no one should ask that question except a father, a mother, a doctor. That is an inappropriate question to actually put in print for a child to read and entertain the question. And I'm not going to repeat the question because the question to me is just way out there, especially posed to a 10, 11, 12-year-old. So the bottom line is I feel that some of these questions pose thoughtful responses, which you want to do, but some are just inappropriate for the age and the profile that we are administered this survey to. And I know that much thought has gone into it. This is not an easy thing. And I know that, don't get me wrong, I understand that. And all districts are doing it. I mean, when I tell somebody that I have an issue with this, they'll say, wow, I don't know why you have an issue. Region 15, 16, everybody, the suburbs do it. But to me, that's not an answer. I just have to vent my impersonations of this, my feelings of it. And those are my concerns. And I know the survey is of value, parts of it. And the issue is I don't like parts of it. So I could go on and on. But the survey says keep it short. So, Mr. President, I think Thank you. And so I will stop.
Thank you, Commissioner Stango. Vice President Harvey.
Thank you, and keeping it short. First of all, I totally support this survey. I thank you for what you're doing. My concern is this, and I was really paying attention to when you started talking about in our urban districts, what urban districts were involved. And my concern is that the interpretation, like I'm looking at one of the questions here, during the past 12 months, have you ever been electronically harassed? And in parens, texting, Instagram, Facebook, I think there's more, Snapchat, etc. And, you know, I'm really concerned about the bullying in our district. And I'm concerned that, you know, I hate to say in the urban districts, but the urban districts, the kids may call that bullying as opposed to calling it being harassed. So do you have any comment on that? I just want to make sure that we get that interpretation. Go ahead.
Yes, so the question originally said bullied, and we were asked to change it to harassment.
Why? Was there a reason given? Because that's what the kids refer to.
Yes.
Harassment, it doesn't have the same impact as bullying does. Just wondering.
Yes. So I don't
want to put you on the spot, but I'm just.
So it was a person within the district that asked that we change the language from bullied to harassed. And I believe that there was a reason around the language that can or cannot be used in the district with regard to that behavior.
Really?
I can go back through my emails and capture that information and give you that communication trail.
Right.
But it originally did say bullying, and it was we were asked to change it to harassment. That was a change requested by a person here in the school district.
Okay, so let me just say this, whoever said that. I mean, I'm not going against what they're saying, but we last year had, in the community, had a session with the children that will be taking this type of survey. And it was bullying that was used as opposed to harassment. It was more, and I'm just saying, these kids poured their heart out, and it was bullying, the word bullying. And I just hope that it's not watered down and that the kids don't really address this, or because bullying is an issue, not only in this district, but other districts.
Yeah.
So it's just if I'm going to put something that I am against, and that is the use of harassment and the terminology. In urban districts, kids use something different, something other than, and I think this harassment is an example of that. So I'm
Yes.
just saying.
So the electronic copy of those questions that I sent you had some items highlighted in yellow.
Yes.
And the items highlighted in
Yes.
yellow or language
Yes.
that was changed. And
Okay.
so harassment is highlighted, and that was one because it originally did say bullying. And then there was a question about your prescribed to you, I believe it said by a physician, and that was asked to be changed to from a doctor. And Waterbury was changed to Waterbury because it was another school that also used these, or another community that also used these particular questions.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so thank you. Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
I just, whoever has ears to hear.
I do
think
not
when
want it
we-
watered down either, but I will find out more information
All
about
right.
why that language change was made, because I believe there was a particular reason why it was changed from
Okay.
bullying to harassment, and I'll see if I can
Got it.
track that down and share that with you, Commissioner.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Commissioner Jason Van Stone.
Super quick. I have some issues with this. I don't think I have issues with the survey. I think I have issues, sadly, with the world we live in that makes us have to ask these questions. So I won't beat the same drum that Commissioner Stango did. But I think one thing he said that did pique a question for me, I'm not too sure there is an answer. Given this is a blind survey, it's, if a child does answer a question that, in our hearts, we'd really like to follow up on, especially some of those self-harm questions.
Right.
Has any other district or entity figured out a way around that where you could open up something to say, if you want more information or you want to talk to somebody, here's your opportunity to waive your anonymity and get some help?
Not that I'm aware of, but it doesn't mean that we can't be a trailblazer and do that. So at the, we can add something to our proctor instructions to say, if any questions in this survey make you feel uncomfortable or like you need support, or if you feel like you need or would like to speak with someone afterwards, please let your teacher know, or please, ask to go down to guidance. So we can absolutely include something like that if something comes up.
And maybe I'm not too sure the best way. It's one of these questions I ask, I have no idea what the right answer is. But I think Commissioner Stango's right, that some of these questions could spur a conversation in a kid. And rather than just say, hey, thanks for taking the study, see you later.
Right.
And then them go have to individually deal with whatever the question might be.
Right.
Maybe some kind of methodology to reach out, even if it's one kid out of 19,000 that wants to talk to somebody.
Yeah, we're not able to identify it in the data set because that would violate,
Right.
Confidentiality, but not to say that we can't make that part of proctor instructions to say any student who feels like they need support after this, or has questions or would like more information or would like to talk with someone about the survey, we can absolutely include that.
One other question I had is on the instrument itself. It seems a lot of the questions seem to have a theme that you kind of follow along. And then in some sections, there's a giant curveball. Is there an intentionality there where it's a psychology where if you not keep them off balance, you get more honest answers? Because it's like, have you driven in a car? Have you done this? Have you done this? And it's all really mild stuff. And then it's like, hey, have you done heroin?
Yeah.
It's kind of out of the blue, and you weren't kind of expecting that question.
Yes, there is a purpose for mixing the question sets up. Some kids get tired, take a break, move back on. Some, if they put all the questions of a particular topic area together, they might answer only those or skip over the entire topic area. And so there's a number of reasons why they're mixed in the way they are. I agree with you. They're dispersed in here, there, and everywhere, and that's to improve the sample. Also, in your PowerPoint, we had just given you a little bit of information about how and why surveys are ever kicked out of the sample. And one of the reasons that a survey would be kicked out is if 40 or more questions are left unanswered. If the survey contains significantly disparate information. So if we are only surveying youth in grades 7 through 10 and someone marks themselves down as an 11th grader, that survey will get kicked out. And excessive unrealistic responses. So no, I haven't done any of this, but then I did do that thing. And so there are a number of algorithms that surveys would be booted for, and I think that's another one of the reasons why they mix the questions here, there, and across the instrument as well.
I figured there was some intentionality.
That was my very analytical, technical answer I just gave you too, by the way.
I bought it, so nice job. Thank you, Ms. President.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions?
Can you just ask the students what they think
I
about?
can't hear you.
Can you ask the students what they may think about
Oh,
the
sure.
survey?
Our student reps have any comments or questions? Please talk at the microphone.
I think it would be a very beneficial opportunity for students to speak out about what they think and what they're going through.
Thank you. Zachary?
I think that the questions are topical and relevant. They're questions that kids are asking each other and talking about, so it's beneficial that people who need to know the answers will know the answers, and it will make change for these students.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner Serrano Adorno. Commissioner Hernandez. I'm rough with double names.
Back to Jason's question, that if you do put it in, I would suggest it be a guidance counselor, not a teacher.
Got it. Yeah, and that's me like going from the cuff. I would absolutely make sure that whatever statement we put in there, that it's vetted and
Right.
approved by everyone. Absolutely.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Darren Schwartz with a presentation on the State Department of Education Accountability Report.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening, Darren.
Hello. Hot mic tonight. Good evening, Board Superintendent Ruffin. So tonight we're going to talk about data. I know it's sometimes odd to talk about data in early March that it pertains to 1819. We have received our accountability index from the State Department of Education as recently as last month. And so this is the typical time where we talk about the accountability index, not just the Smarter Balanced or NGSS or SAT scores. Tonight I wanted to add in a few slides in discussion with Dr. Ruffin regarding alliance districts and why that's important and who we are. We are an alliance district. As you know, we have it is comprised of 33 districts in the state of Connecticut, and we typically serve, and alliance districts are actually chosen because they have the lowest 30 accountability index scores in the state of Connecticut. And we serve 42% of Connecticut's children, including 63% of students of color, 65% of Connecticut's low-income students, and 76% of the English learners in Connecticut. Just to give the board an update on our population here in Waterbury, as of today, we serve 19,223 students. We have 3,746 special education students in the district, and we have the pleasure of serving 3,447 English learners or bilingual learners in the district. Our racial makeup of the district is 57% Hispanic, 22% Black, 15% white, and 3% biracial students. The Alliance grant districts have outpaced the non-Alliance districts in literacy, numeracy, chronic absence, and graduation rates since the beginning of the Accountability Index in 15-16. These achievements were accomplished with less resources and financial supports. Some of you probably are not surprised to know that Alliance districts educate students with approximately $900 less per pupil than non-Alliance districts. And despite the investment of Alliance dollars, the state of Connecticut spends nearly $200 million less on students who attend Alliance districts, even though the data on the first page shows that we serve the vast majority of the population. And this last slide and this information came from the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, is what Alliance districts need. And we've seen a little bump there in the Alliance district funding. We hope that continues, and we hope we get support with that. Continue to work for that universal preschool, because we know that early intervention, early education does make a difference for our students. And focusing on the whole child needs, many of our students come with a vast array of needs that are beyond just reading, writing, and math, science, and that it's important for us to look at the whole child as we move forward, not just as a district, but as a state. Okay. So I'd like to do a refresher, and there are, I believe there's at least one new member on the board, and for our students tonight. The Accountability Index was changed, and in the first year that it came out was 15-16. It was based on 2014, 2015 data, and it applies to all public districts and schools in the state of Connecticut. This Accountability Index is a more holistic model As you remember, we typically just looked before 14-15 just at scores, and that was it. This model looks at student achievement still, but it also takes into account student growth. Student growth actually accounting for the highest percent for the index. Chronic absenteeism is included in this, college and career readiness, graduation rates, post-secondary entrance, physical fitness, and arts access. Okay. So when this data came out, we ran the numbers, and Tara Battistoni, who's here tonight, and I were sifting through the numbers, and as we typically do for the board, we usually show you how Waterbury does, and then we put together a slide that's in there regarding the DIRG. And then just happenstance, we just said, I wonder how we did compared to the rest of the state. And so when we popped that up, we were around 13th to the top when we looked at every single district in the entire state of Connecticut. And then Tara made a good point, and she said, well, I know some of those districts, and some of those districts, not to take anything away, but they only serve 9th to 12th grade students. Some of districts in Connecticut only serve high school students. Some districts in Connecticut only have one elementary school, for example. And so and also charter schools, some charter schools are considered a district of themselves. And so as we looked through those that were ahead of us, we started researching on each one that was ahead of us, and we said, wait a second, they're not a K-12 district, they're a high school, they're a charter school. And so as we went through and looked at the 12 or 13 that were above us, we realized that our 6.8 point increase on the accountability index was the largest increase since 2015-16 when compared to all other towns and cities that serve students in grades pre-K to 12.
Excellent.
Wow.
Congratulations.
It's a team effort, obviously. And with that being said, we have a long ways to go, and when you're near the bottom, you should be showing tremendous amount of growth. You should be outpacing other people, and we realize that, we recognize that, but it's also important to take a step back and also celebrate the small wins along the way as you improve. Schools are placed into 5 categories according to this accountability index score. Levels 1 through 3 are pretty self-explanatory. 4 and 5 get a little tricky, so we'll just review that real quick. So if you're a turnaround school, and the easy way to kind of explain if you're a level 4 and 5 is if you're identified as a turnaround or focus school, you enter in as level 4. If when they run the numbers again 3 years later, because they keep the same, you keep the same classification for 3 years, if you're a turnaround or focus school, if they run the numbers again and you're still a turnaround or focus school, you move to level 5. You didn't get out of level 4, you move to level 5 automatically, okay? So you could have even shown growth, but if you didn't get out of being a focus or a turnaround, you go to level 5. And these are the classifications of what makes a turnaround in a focus school. The next slide is how we've done over the last 4 years of the data, and you have the 1-year change and a 3-year change that you can see as a part of our next generation accountability results. I do want to point out a few things. In 2B, we've shown a growth over time on all but one indicator, but specifically in 2B, ELA average percentage growth with high need students, which again, growth is what matters the most in this accountability index. We beat the state average in there, and we beat the state average in the chronic absenteeism we're within 1% of the state's average for chronic absenteeism. We were within 3 points for percent of target achieved for all students in ELA. We were within 3 points of math average percentage of growth target achieved for high need students, and we were very close to the physical fitness state, the state average. And so in those areas, we were within striking distance of the state average. The next slide is something that you all are familiar with, that we typically have shown, and I think it tells a story within itself. I don't need to read each number. Waterbury is one of the few districts in the DIRG that have had the steady growth over a long period of time. And the next two slides cover all of our campuses that are included in the accountability index and how they're performing in their category. You'll see the accountability index number, with Rotella being at the top, making it over that 85-point threshold to be a level 1 school. And you can see that their 1-year change and the 3-year change over time. Obviously, we work with principals on this data. We talk about this data internally. We like to see change over time because change over time is trends. We try not to react to just a 1-year jump up or down too much. But we were able to go out and celebrate many of these schools, as some of you saw through the Twitter postings and Dr. Ruffin's invite. I believe Commissioner Stango came along on the bus tour to celebrate some of these increases for the schools, and that was a good time. If you notice, the next slide is the category changes over a period of time. Again, what you've seen here is if you hone in on really category 4, that's where most of the change has occurred. So category 4, in 2015-16, we had 9 schools in category 3 and 12 schools in category 4. In this most recent index, we have 13 schools that have moved into category 3, 1 school in category 4, and you can see that some of those schools, and those are the 3 comprehensive middle schools, they went back they became a category 5 because they did not exit the category 4 status, the focus status. All other schools, mainly the elementary schools, were able to exit the focus status, and therefore they're level 3. And that's why you see that jump up to level 3. These are some highlights for category improvements. Last year, Rotella again moving to category 1, and we had 4 additional elementary schools that moved to category 2. And Rotella was also given a title of School of Distinction because of their tremendous growth for high-need students in mathematics. So they were named a School of Distinction, and we celebrated that again last week with them. And so that concludes the presentation. I'm sure you have questions. Be happy to entertain those right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Jason Van Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, congratulations in general. It's a very nice narrative. I think the more pluses we see, the more arrows up are always what we're looking for. I guess my question kind of is essentially what's next. So now as we start seeing some trends, we start seeing certain campuses starting to get it, for lack of a better term. What do we do to kind of find some best practices? You know, generally in my world, you find a like and kind that are doing something really well, and you try to emulate those behaviors, those protocols, those policies. I know you can't always just lay that over in the educational setting and get the same thing. We're not talking about widgets here. But what do we do now that, you know, we have some of this data and we're starting to get a place in Connecticut where at least we're doing kind of the same testing each year, so you can kind of do a little apples to apples stuff. So what have we seen both in some of our positive schools that we're trying to say, we'll take a little bit of this and sprinkle it throughout the district? And additionally, what are we doing in some of our schools that are continuing to concern us to kind of find patterns within there and change them.
I think we're noticing, and I have to give a shout out to my colleagues, the assistant superintendents who work specifically with the elementary and secondary schools. I think during superintendent forums and during monthly meetings, getting administrators together and talking about best practices and talking about what's working, and they kind of get sick of hearing from us anyways. And so getting them to talk to one another about what's working in their schools has been a great help. Having them collaborate with one another on their school improvement plans and their professional development plans, I believe, has been a positive in that direction. And I think that what we're seeing is that the administration that has been able to focus on implementing high-quality curriculum and instruction and being laser-like focused on monitoring that implementation, we're seeing the improvements. Those that are able to make it to the data teams, and instead of getting bogged down on the operations of the day, we're seeing improvements. And just as recently as a few weeks ago, we had a superintendent forum where we talked about big rocks. And we talked about the big rocks are high-quality curriculum and instruction and making sure that teachers are entering the room every day, being supported, but also having the materials that they need, and also being held accountable for implementing curriculum. And we had one principal in conversation with Dr. Rodriguez and I who said, I'm not checking my email and answering during the day anymore, because you'll get caught into the vortex of email. The kids are here for only a certain amount of time. The teachers are only here for a certain amount of time. I can answer email at 2:30. And it was funny because we walked into her building, it was at Crosby, and Mrs. Gopi was walking through the building with her literacy facilitators checking on the implementation of Springboard. So we're seeing some those successes, and we're having administrators share those out with the staff, with their colleagues. And the second thing is really we're still focusing on implementing high-quality curriculum at the secondary level. So this is the first year that ELA and mathematics have a Connecticut core-aligned standard curriculum that they're implementing as a whole across the district. We also have just finished off an RFP for secondary mathematics for middle school to change the programming for middle school. And so in a lot of this gain that you see, if you really dig down into the data, it looks like a big jump in middle school ELA was a big cause for our increase last year. And if you recall, we implemented a new curriculum in ELA last year that was finally standards aligned. And so continuing hammering that home and getting making sure that not only we have those curriculums, but we're monitoring the implementation is key.
So I think those are all the right answers, and I know, in the past year, I've heard from a number of teachers especially, not necessarily the administration or central office staff, kind of to a degree begging to be part of the process. So when we do have these kind of cross-campus conversations, in addition to you, the cabinet administrators, do we have, the teachers from some of the schools that we talked about here, Chase, Carrington, Washington, and Regan, who moved a category? If the Carrington teachers in their K-8 model can talk to, say, the Gilmartin ones, where we see maybe different directions, and at the teaching level to say, this is what I'm doing in my classroom, to help foster more of those conversations. Is that something we're trying? It's not always the easiest thing to do, to get an entire school together to chat as far as the teachers, but I think, a lot of time those boots on the ground opinions can also take effect much faster if they're not filtered through, the chain of command, and 3 years later we implement something.
Mm-hmm.
So do we also try to make sure that we have those conversations, teacher to teacher level?
At this time, we don't have a structure that's efficient to share that information. What I foresee happening is, especially with a professional development supervisor coming on board, is at the very least moving into a direction where we're creating a clearinghouse of best practices in Waterbury that can be shared across the district, if not one-on-one, face-to-face, at least virtually, so that teachers are uploading best practices for the district.
And I think that would be incredibly helpful, one, for the students, who should always be the first of the people we're caring about. But additionally, we hear all the time about morale and things like that. I think the more good ideas we can get from our crop of teachers that are implemented throughout the district and we see positive results as our students, I think it's a win-win. So the more we could do that, I think the better.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Commissioner Van Stone. Dr. Ruffin.
Yes, I just, I wanted to add to the response to your question. When you look at the indicators for the accountability system, and when you look at all of the measures of success, you will also note that when districts are struggling financially, some of the first things that they do cut would be in arts access. And we are fighting really hard to not let that happen in Waterbury. In addition to that, what we have learned from the schools that are very successful is that they also have high levels of teacher presence in that school every day. And for the schools that are struggling, they're either still absent of teachers because we were not able to fill a position, or someone left and is on leave and we've not been able to fill the position because we can't, and we fill it with a substitute, or we have positions that have been filled with a substitute all year long. Those schools are hurting very badly. And that has been problematic. So we know that that is definitely one of the root causes of student success across the district. Additionally, while we have new curriculum, and Mr. Schwartz and the academic team have done a great job in being very intentional about purchasing curriculum and instruction pieces and materials for our teachers. That was a top priority last year, and we're getting there. The other piece is also to make the content area very relevant to students. Our students have said, we have teachers that say, there has to be a connection of why we're learning this and how it fits into real world. And we need to change mindsets to make that happen in classrooms for students every day. Once we have done that, I think we're not only going to see little bits of improvement and growth, I think we're going to see where we will get to a point where we can sustain excellence instead of occasionally hitting it in certain schools because we have high teacher presence each and every day. And at least one of the schools, when we went to celebrate them, mentioned that for 2 days in a row, that school, and it was Carrington, had 100% teacher attendance for 2 days in a row. That's almost unheard of. And we need to celebrate that because it shows in student work. So I want to add that to that because we have to continuously aim to get a quality teacher in front of all of the students every day because there are far too many children without that.
Mr. President, can I follow up on that?
Surely.
I just want to make sure I understand your answer. So in addition to the district trying to make sure we have a full-time certified teacher in every school, which I think is incumbent upon us, have we found a correlation that in addition to us having trouble filling certain positions, that the schools that tend to be towards the top of this category have a general, maybe not 100%, but the teachers in that school show up more often than not versus some of the ones where we find struggling? Do we find a higher absentee rate for teachers?
I don't have the data in front of me to share with you, but I do believe we can make that correlation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Commissioner Hernandez and then Commissioner Brown.
Okay. Everybody knows Walsh is my school. What can we do to help Walsh? Why are they dropping? Is it because the lack of money that they no longer receive for being a turnaround school? What is it? What is going on?
I don't want to answer for the assistant superintendent for the elementary school and make a presumption, but I don't believe it's because of the lack of money.
Okay.
Commissioner, I will add that while the turnaround money has no longer been available for Welch or Crosby in terms of the turnaround funding, the resources that the school has gotten have never gone away. So we've continued to support them. I think that is part of a longer answer is that we really have to look at where are we getting the biggest return for our investment, because I don't believe that the resources that we have poured into Welch equated in that high return on student learning. And we have to pay attention to that and find out the root cause.
Yes, please, let's do that.
Commissioner Brown.
But the funding and the supports that were there last year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
You know, just in that note, Superintendent, I know that we were doing a facility audit, a resource audit, and I think I would be very happy to see that per individual school, what resources are in schools and how they are allocated, because I think that would help us understand this. I was just curious about 5 and 6, Darren. Preparation for college and career readiness percentage has gone way up. But passing the exams for these programs is stagnant.
Yeah.
So what is going, I mean, it seems like if more kids.
So we're getting more students into the,
So, but the people passing them is stagnant. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, it looks like a minus. to
it's
me.
the only one that
Yeah,
we've
so-
stagnated at, and a lot of that has to do with the rigor within the schools, meeting the standards, having a common curriculum, again, English and math being the first time, and high schools being standard across the district, and getting truly students prepared, and having a culture within those schools, specifically the high schools, a data-driven decision-making culture that actually looks at the data and makes decisions for students based on that data, is not equitable across the district. And so I would venture to say that high schools and middle schools being a primary focus, at least coming out of my office, will continue for the foreseeable future, because it is a concern, and it is something that we're looking into. I know Dr. Epperson and myself and Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Ruff in Cabinet, we meet on a consistent basis, but specifically Dr. Epperson and I working closely on monitoring that data and working with the principals on that.
I mean, I think that's an important observation and important strategy.
Absolutely.
Because it seems to me that every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, more attention to that data
Absolutely.
on a regular basis would serve these programs better.
Yeah, just as recently as last week, we get periodic emails from the College Board regarding our linkage to Khan Academy and how many students are getting into Khan Academy, and there's obvious research behind how many students entering and using that using that program and their increase in SAT scores. And I just sent an email out, I believe it was either early this week or late last week, that celebrated Career Academy for being, right now their freshmen have the most linked, have the highest percentage of linked students in the state, according to that data that we saw. But it was also, it was sent to all the principals saying, catch up. Like, it's time, we can't just, we're not just celebrating Career Academy, we also need all schools to be at the same, at that type of level and have that kind of passion to make sure students are getting what they need, using the data.
I just saw it as it kind of just jumped out at me.
Yep.
And explain to me, what does physical fitness, what does that entail in terms of the grade? What do you have to to
So that's
improve that grade?
that's the assessment that's given periodically.
To each student?
So at certain grade levels, yes. So it's given to each student at that grade level, and they have to pass a series of exams for 4 different types of exams for students that would be, and they have to reach a certain level, pacer test, your typical sit and reach, pull, yeah, everybody's nodding there, so very familiar with it. And so those standards are also set by the State Department.
Okay. But overall, I think everything's moving in the right direction, and at the CABE conference, they mentioned this study, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, and that one slide is just so compelling about the 33 districts that are serving all
those
so
students.
many children, and we're not getting the dollars that we need to really do this work. But anyway, keep moving in the right direction. Thank you.
This side of the room, any questions, comments? How about our 2 student representatives? Any comments that either Zachary or Angelina would like to add? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the next agenda item, number 5, an an FYI of amendments to various agreements for special education services for students, Catherine Gabrielson. And you're actually up for about 2 or 3, so
I'm just
the
going
floor is yours.
I'm going to combine them all into one.
Whatever.
All right, you got it.
And I'll try to take only 5 minutes. In the legislative session of 2018, there was a law passed, Public Act 18183, which governed that as of July 1st, 2019, we had to have contracts in place with private special education providers for students that school systems placed into those programs, and that those contracts or agreements needed to articulate how tuition was calculated on a daily, monthly, and annual basis, as well as extended school year and related services costs. It also provided that schools, private providers needed to provide LEAs, school districts, with information to bill for Medicaid reimbursement, because that is now a requirement of law for all school systems in Connecticut. We had 3-year aggregate contracts in place. We still have those in place. The amendments that you have before you are what Waterbury has done to satisfy that requirement so that we can still receive our excess cost reimbursement grant. What was not included was the confidential, individualized student information. Each student in those schools has their own rate sheet confidentially attached, which is maintained in my office and court counsel's office. So we did not have them in place for December 1st, but we got them in place for the March 1st filing, and that was approved by the State Department in terms of our being able to do that and still recoup our excess cost reimbursement grant. So with the help of a lot of people, we did get this done and properly filed for the March filing date. In terms of a new procedure, I am working with Corporation Counsel to iron out a new procedure going forward so that we have this in place in a timely manner moving forward for the next school year.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Jason Van Stone?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Kathy. So given that there's no real numbers here, are we just kind of approving the new form of the contract?
Well, this isn't actually up for approval. It's just for informational purposes at this point in time.
Then that maybe answered my question, because I wasn't too sure what we were supposed to be approving.
It's for your information that we had to have this in place. We did contact each school and we got actual costs for each student, and that's what's articulated in the rate sheets that have been signed off on, along with the attached to the amendments by the mayor and the heads of schools for each of the 12 different schools that we had to contact.
And was the goal of this at the state level at least, and I don't mean for you to speculate what was in their heads, just to offer some more transparency? Because we always had the number, at least we thought we had the number until it changed. This just kind of delineated, that big number is what is this per diem rate times this many days times this.
Right. So this was actually the result of the auditors of public accounts when they were looking at private providers who were offering these programs to special ed students who could not be serviced in their LEAs. And there were a lot of schools who did not have contracts with their local school systems. And so this was put into place to really look at their transparency and make sure that they weren't charging $150,000 a year and using that money to make glossy brochures to try and recruit more students, but that in fact the costs are going back to the student.
Understood. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Next on the docket is Doreen Viola. Request approval of transfers for the 2019-20. And you also have another item right after that, monthly expenditure report, FYI.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. So before you is one of my probably first transfers in the fiscal year 1920. I'm sure there'll be more as we meet each time. The first transfer is, in total, the transfer is for $758,000. First transfer is for special education. We need to transfer $500,000 into the out-of-district tuition line and $100,000 into the special ed purchase service line. And we're taking that from salary lines in special education through attrition and through vacancies. Second transfer is for, also for tuition, but it's for the costs for the school choice program. And we are taking that also from a Crosby teachers, regular ed teacher line that is showing a surplus due to attrition. So just consider the transfer as we need at this time. Going back to special education, you know, we don't really fully fund that line. Going back to what Darren was explaining about Alliance districts being totally underfunded and just receiving what we do in the operating budget, we don't fully fund this line, and we kind of use the attrition to offset it. Any questions?
Questions, comments, anyone? Thank you.
Okay.
Next item is expenditure update.
Yeah, so it's on there as an FYI. You'll obviously see where we've surplused some of the lines that I just used to transfer and where some of the deficits are. Again, the biggest deficits are in purchase services, where we have the tuition transportation line. But if you notice at the last page, if you notice the contingency during this month, I am showing that we will not be using a portion of the contingency, the $3 million, but leaving the $675,000 at this point as if we may need that. Any questions? Okay,
We're all
thank
set.
you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Next item up is Dr. Rodriguez on a request for approval of a Connecticut Community College's college facility request.
Good evening, Board. President Pagano, Vice President Harvey, Superintendent Ruffin. Today I'm here to request a facility reservation agreement with Naugatuck Valley Community College for a professional learning series for 60 administrators for the Waterbury Public School System. It is at no cost to the district.
Would you say no cost?
Correct.
That's a
I
good
like that.
number.
Yeah, that's a good number. Perfect number.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Van Stone.
At the risk of exploding Commissioner Stango's head, this is for our teachers to learn how to better relate, deal with all the issues regarding, that's a long title.
So specifically, the professional learning is for executive cabinet, supervisors, and some school leaders at this time. When Dr. Ruffin met with Bridge to Success and with the Quest program here in Waterbury, they talked about the prevalence of LGBTQIA plus students in our district and wanted to make sure that we understood that the data that was collected was such that we understood the students that we serve. So this is to create an awareness of our own data and then to educate our executive level administrators on the issues that many of our students may, I don't mean many, but some of our students may face on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Batting cleanup, Mr. Will Clark. You have the rest of the baseball game at your disposal.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, President Pagano, Dr. Ruffin. I'll take the next three together, 10, 11, and 12. This is related to a school construction project. This is the Generali roof project. The state's kind of adjusted the way it does its paperwork, and this kind of comes in here in a bit of an odd way. But it used to be you sort of put in for the project, and then you came back and made these requests, and now you have to make the request all prior, get everything up to them, get the money, and then come back and then go through the process of the actual process, if you will. So this is basically asking for you to approve us to submit the application to the state to do the project. And to do that project means to do a project, to do schematic design, and to pick a committee. So we're not picking the committee tonight, we're not doing schematic design tonight, we're not doing an RFP tonight. You're just granting us the authority so we could submit the paperwork to do this roof project. We have submitted the project through the capital budget, and so we have the funding set aside on the city side. That's one of the other precursors to this. So this allows us to check off all the new boxes in the form, get that up to the state, that you all have approved it, that we have the money, et cetera. And then we'll come back probably in a few months with the contracts for the actual project, schematic design, request to actually put the committee together, which would be a building committee like for the project. Just very briefly, it would be an 80-20 reimbursement, state on the 80 end and we on the 20. It's about a $1.2 million project is what we're projecting. This particular roof is over 20 years old, and we're doing quite a bit of maintenance on it on a regular basis, i.e. when it rains, we go do maintenance on it as it leaks through. It's roughly 27,000 square feet. It's got 3 different sections. So all of that has been reviewed with our roof contractor to put together the estimates and so forth. There are a section of the roof that's over the portables that's not eligible for the state reimbursement, but we'd still do some of that work as well as we're at it, and that's essentially part of the local share that we've factored in.
How long of a project is it envisioned?
Once we get started and out there, I think this is a matter of, it can be done relatively quickly as far as once they get started, a couple of...
During the summer?
Yeah, during the summer, you're talking maybe a month or so to just get rolling. The work itself is not all that complicated. Rip it off and put on the new roof.
Any questions?
How many portables are up there? Well,
This is the back section. I think it's one building, if I'm not mistaken. It's on the side behind where the playground area is.
The Republicans.
There's a couple of classrooms back there, but I think it's one actual building itself.
Commissioner Jason Van Stone.
It's about 700 square feet, though, that particular section.
If Commissioner Orso would yield his time, just a quick question. So you said the current roof was 20-plus years old?
Right.
We're sure we've exhausted any warranties that may or may not have been under, as I recall, when I first started on this board, there was talk of many of these roofs were done with 30-year warranties. Is this one of them, and is there any way we can go back and get any money back from the original people?
I can confirm that. I believe we've exhausted all that. I'll check the paperwork on that. But the different sections, the oldest section is the main section of the roof, which is, by our records, 1993. 1997 is a section about 4,000 square feet above the 5th grade area, and then there's a section over the gym and the lower section that goes back to 2000. So we're talking, the youngest is 20.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but if there's any money on the...
Yeah, no, I'll certainly review the records with Christian Roche. I believe we've exhausted all that, but if there were any, we can roll that into the specs.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner Orso.
Any other comments? Questions? Thank you, everyone. Will, your next agenda item?
Yes, these are the permits, essentially. I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary or new uses. Most of them are actually board uses, school uses. The non-board uses are folks who have used before, based on my review with Sandy. So nothing way out of the ordinary.
Any observations, questions, or comments? Commissioner Sweeney.
Well, under item 14, we have one more for the Waterbury Islamic Cultural Center, where there is no name and phone number for the emergency contact.
I'll check that.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Clark.
Thank you very much.
And you don't have any more, right?
No.
You're all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Our next item is the superintendent's update to the board, which is delineated on the agenda. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll go forward. Are we having an executive session tonight? Nope. So would someone like to do us all a favor and...
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I may have a second.
Second.
Anybody want to discuss or turn it down? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good night, everyone.
Have to say that.